Oh, hey, Alice. You walked in at a good time. Sitting here with Breeze and Samtre from Fyre Byrd. How you doing, guys?
We're
Good.
good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. You guys have a new single coming out tomorrow, February 17th. Evil, evil, evil
Hmm.
exists. Let's talk about that first of all. You guys are having a lot of fun, and clearly with your names and also your music. So I guess we were just talking about before you got here, Alice. You had a track Godless, which has a short name, and now you're moving into longer names. Was that a
Yeah.
planned decision, or is that just kind of happening?
It
I think it's just happening.
it nothing is planned. Everything
Yeah.
just kind of happens.
Yeah.
We did go through a phase in writing where it was just like, like let's do stupid long names. Like Evil, Evil, Evil Exists is not the longest name we have
Mhm.
in the bank. But we were kind of like, I like how Fallout Boy would just put stupidly long, ridiculous song titles. And they sometimes wouldn't even be in the song. And
Yeah.
so it was just kind of funny when you like save a session and you have to name it and you kind of panic. Like we have a song that is not the one coming out tomorrow, but it's coming out a little bit later in the year. And it's called here's a spoiler. It's called I Hate Lies, but I Tell Them. And we came up with that title because it's just the first line of the song, and it was like save the session, what are you going to call it? And you just panic and you're like, look at the lyric sheet. Oh, that
What
I
am I
hate
gonna
lies, but I
remember?
tell them. Awesome. So
So
yeah.
there's a lot of intuition in your process. It's not very formulaic. I like that.
Yeah.
No, and you know what? The exact same thing is with Evil, Evil, Evil Exists. It's the first lyric in the song.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where do you think art comes from? Like source wise. What is art?
Mm.
That's a huge question.
Yeah, it is. Um, I guess there's Alex Gray, the artist who does all the Tool album covers.
Oh yes, actually.
Yeah,
I
he
actually
uh he has this painting that's really beautiful of it's a man at a canvas and he's painting and there's like this entity behind him and he's like shooting a laser into the back of his head and it's
mm,
it's like he's like tapped into this thing
Mhm.
and I guess um
huh.
when
That's
people talk about stuff just kind of coming to them, it raises a lot of questions to me, like what is that?
Mm.
I do I think both of us definitely believe that there is an entity that is like ordering and orchestrating, not in like a manipulative like puppet kind of way, but like we believe that there is a creator. And I think if you believe that, then you're foolish to think that art isn't something that that creator has also created. So I think like we definitely believe that it comes from our creator, and since he's a creator, he created nature, he created where we live, he created us. Um, and like that's kind of art is like a way that people like to express themselves. And I think it's a really cool way to think about God or any entity. For us, it's like Yahweh. It's a cool thing to think about of like this being created something or like things. How am I trying to word this? This being expressed himself and created us and the environment we live in. And part of that is us expressing ourselves and making art or
It's like a likeness of it, like an
yeah.
attribute of like creativity attribute of like just like how an entity can create something out of nothing. We can kind of tap into that same thing of like no one can like see music, like you can't see sound, but you can kind of like see the effects of sound
Mm.
or um things that you like draw, like even like emotion, like you can't actually see emotion, you can't see your mind, but you can see the effects of your mind, and I think that's like around us all the time, which I think is like a really mind-blowing thing. Like you could just
Yeah.
kind of sit and ponder on that for a little bit and being like, oh whoa, like that's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
I think
Yeah, Alice walked in at a good time.
Oh,
yeah. What so I think that's a really good point, because even at the very least, like the inspiration, the things that inspire the art are around us. There,
Mhm.
so it's like who made what? Yeah. That's an excellent point, and I tend to agree a lot with that. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and it was I I had a really strict upbringing in terms of certain things. I was also homeschooled,
Mhm.
um, but I had one thing I do have a great appreciation for is I've read scripture, like I've read the Bible, Old and New Testament, and um, when I was a teenager, I just moved out, 18. I was like, hot topic atheist kid, just really just uh just fuck religion. And it took me a while to get to a place where I could appreciate scripture again. And I think I've done deeper study now than like I ever have in my life. And
Mhm.
it's a funny thing, because what would evil do if, I mean, like if you have an effective weapon against evil, what would evil do to that weapon besides go inside of it and corrupt it from the inside out? So it's like we
Yeah.
have issues with organized religion that fuck up the message, and basically tell you the opposite a lot of the times. That was a little bit of a tangent. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
That's fine.
that's
Like,
like
that's like a very common thing, and like I think any sort of upbringing, and like you do get to a point where I think even if you're not even like grown up religious, like you do get a point in life where you're like thinking for yourself, and like you have questions, and like I think it's always a good thing to be able to like try and get those questions answered, because we're created to be very curious, like
yeah.
Yeah.
so we want to get to the bottom of things, and like we do have a design in us that kind of yearns for like answers outside of ourselves, outside of our environment. It's kind of like this thing that we have built in us. So you do get to points where you're like, I need to kind of see for myself, what do I actually believe? And like it's a very common thing to just go to the other. It's kind of like you're on this side and you go to the other side, and then you kind of balance out and kind of come to, which is a like a healthy thing to do, I think, at least. But like when you are saying you're like reading scriptures and stuff, like what do you think is like the one thing that you're sort of seeking out of it the most?
Um, I have a lot of frustration with organized religion, clearly, but part of that frustration, a big part of it, is that I know so much more about it than the people propagating it a lot of the time.
Mhm.
And the message that's being discussed, like fundamentalism in scripture, is a very recent concept, 500 years or so. For the ancient rabbis that wrote the Torah, uh, these are parables, that are very true in a sense. But if you take them too literally, they actually lose their message a lot of the time.
Mm.
I point to the book of Job as my kind of go-to example of this,
Yep.
because who's telling this narrative? It's like, okay, you're here put with um, God and the accuser, uh, and this conversation's being narrated by whom? It's like if I handed you guys this book and I wrote the book of Job and I handed it to you, and you read it up and you hear this narrative of God and this other angel, um, you immediately would know that this is something that I came up with. This isn't something that happened to me that I observed. Um, it would take a real stretch for you to say that I saw that, or I mean, unless we're talking about like DMT or something. It's like, you know, like anyway, getting off topic a little bit, but my main point there is it also loses its narrative, because the point of Job is that he doesn't know this conversation is taking place.
Um,
And
Yep.
the moral you get out of that is okay, life sucks, but don't just throw your hands up and curse the sky, because that's not going to make you feel any better and it's not going to help. um, just keep your head up and press on is basically. But if Job is aware that that is taking place, it's kind of like, okay, God, you kind of fucked me over on this. Why are you? But that's not the point, because yeah,
Yeah,
because it's not
because
a literal story.
brings up another like important part of that story is like how honest is his trust in God if he knows like, oh, I've heard this conversation happen, so like I don't need any kind of faith because I know about this thing that's planned
Mm-hmm.
for me. And it's like, yeah, okay, so things around me are going to be destroyed, but like I'm going to be like hurt, but I'm not going to get killed, so it's actually going to work out pretty okay for me in the end. But like, where is kind of like an actual faith if he's hearing that? And like, so trust doesn't really mean what it really means. Yeah.
It's like because the conversation, I like really love that story because it really does have that lesson of like, you know, things are going to happen in life that you are really out of your control. Like, how much control do we really have over our circumstances? What I really love in that discussion between the accuser and God is like, God actually like kind of presents Job to this accuser, like saying, you know, you can do what you want with him. He's not going to really lose faith in me, which is like this. We do it with, you know, people that we're close to, like, you know, someone that you're close to, you know, that they have their back no matter the situation. Like, there is this kind of like relational trust that you have with them. And our life can be crazy, but we've all have those couple of people in our lives, at least I hope, like that you're like, you know what, they're like my go-to people, you know, that are going to have my back. They're with me, whether I have everything or whether I have nothing, you know. And God kind of like presents Job being like, you know what, he's my homie, like he's my guy. He knows who I am, and kind of was like taunting the accuser in a way, being like, hey man, I'm outside of time, like throw what you want at Job, just don't kill him. Like that was his only thing.
And I love I love the, sorry to cut in, I love the accuser being like, yeah, but Job only trusts you because like you've protected him and nothing bad has ever happened to him. And that just tips God a little bit more into like, yeah, but even if bad things happen, I know Job, so go ahead.
So it's just like this really kind of really, I think, like amazing sort of perspective of the story of like what kind of happens in the end with Job is like he kind of goes to God and is like, God, like what is sort of happening here? And God kind of gives him the like throwdown, like you weren't there when I created everything. It's kind of to say like, I'm not in your world. I'm like outside of time and I'm watching from a different perspective to you. So I'm kind of covering everything. And so when you're trusting in me, no matter what circumstance you're in, like I've always got you. And he kind of like ended up restoring everything he lost, like double than what he had. So he was like a very wealthy man. He ended up being like even wealthier. And it was just to kind of show like, I believe like that's what God does, is he can get us out of situations. He's like, he covers us if, you know, we want to be cool with him. like in any relationship, you know, like there's always that you know,
yeah, I that's one of my favorite biblical stories too. I didn't like it as a kid because
it's very hard to read as a kid because you're like, man, these friends are so annoying. And like
I have heard that book is the oldest in the Old Testament, that the Torah is actually the oldest living document we have is of the book of Job in terms of scripture.
cool.
I don't know how true that is, but that's something I heard.
I think I've heard that before as well, actually.
I think it might have been a Dead Sea Scrolls thing or something.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
one of
I
the
find
oldest
like
manuscripts or something.
I find like all that stuff like amazing. Like people are digging in the ground and finding all this
Yeah.
stuff, like the science behind like how to authenticate all this stuff
Oh,
too
yeah.
is like a really crazy process. And yeah, I find that just amazing. Like I know some people like to argue about like what's true from, you know, back in the day, and like we could argue till the cows come home. But the thing is like people are digging in the ground and finding stuff and like learning about, you know,
Yeah,
how people lived and learning their languages and learning like all this stuff, which I think is
Yeah.
crazy because I like to think of like, you know, 1,000 years in the future when they're digging stuff up from like our time and learning how we
they have to learn our
spoke
language.
and like
Like,
it's just kind of funny to think about because like you don't really think of that when we're writing things down, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
What kind of music did was like around in your upbringing, like in the car, in the house?
our parents
A
would
lot
always
of-
listen to this radio station called Gold 104. And do you remember the thing? Gold, what
Gold is
Oh, it's an
it's
Australian
like
accent, actually.
great
Gold,
great classics, something about great classic hits. I don't know.
great classic
It was
hits.
old music, but
Gold
like
104, something like that.
good times and great classic
That's
hits.
it. Good times and great classic hit. And then I'll always have like just like sure.
It would just be like stuff
Do
from
you
the 60s to the 80s, really.
Nice.
Just
Yeah.
like all that.
So there was like a lot of that. Dad loves Elvis, so there was a lot of
he loves it.
like any good Italian man, he loved Elvis. Still does. He actually was visiting in October last year. Mum and Dad came and visited, and we went to Graceland, and that was awesome.
Oh, we're from Australia, by the way.
Yeah,
anyone
just in
listening.
case
What?
Alice and the rest of the guests
If you
from,
No
believe it,
way.
I don't know what the audience is.
we're from
but-
another kind of wonderland,
Yeah.
like another place that people don't, not everyone believes exists.
What influenced the decision to come to Nashi, to Music City?
Music City.
It's Music City, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a whole story. It was like a time. We felt like we were led here, and it was also during the pandemic, and like America is experiences, I think, very different to the well, at least
At least
in
Tennessee, I
Tennessee
feel like it's different to.
and other people we've spoken to, because
Yeah.
we'll sometimes it like describe what it was like, and we get just very blank looks. Like when we first got here, someone was like, how'd you guys make it out? Like, are you okay? And we were just like,
And they said, "We're so glad that you're here and not there."
like we're in like we escaped like a prison or
You
something.
guys are refugees. Yeah.
Literally. I was like, dude, did we like dig a hole under like a fence and like
I was actually wondering, like, what did we leave? Like, what did we get out of? Do we need to
Yeah.
like get people here out of there as well?
I know, does everyone need to come here?
I am
But-
so glad that you guys were able to escape that first world country that probably has a better economy than this one.
Well, I have no idea anymore, but it was pretty shut down, I guess, more than here. So that was probably the shock. And the blank looks, because they're like, wait, what? So
And even where we came from, it wasn't as restricted as other states
Yeah.
and other cities. So, like, yeah, but it was still weird because I thought Adelaide was pretty relaxed in comparison, and then we came to Tennessee and we were like, oh.
and we literally asked, like, did COVID come here? And then it was like we were here like a couple months, and I felt really bad because I literally forgot about COVID until someone was like, someone that we ran into ended up having COVID, and I was like, oh, COVID, like that thing.
Yeah.
And I felt really bad because I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
wow, there's still people in Australia that can't leave their house.
Really?
At
Yeah,
that time,
at that time.
Oh,
we
at
left.
that time. Okay, gotcha.
It's a lot more opened up. I think there's one state that's still like shut down, but
I don't think they're shut down,
they're
but I
open
think
now. I
for a
don't know.
while, some of the states, even after they opened, when we left Australia, the international borders were closed.
Yeah.
And so
So we really escaped.
we really did escape. We weren't even sure, like,
We like stole a plane. It was like a whole like Jason Statham film.
Nice.
yeah.
Vin
Give me the
Diesel
plane.
starring Vin Diesel and Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, it was that really long runway in one of those Fast and the Furious movies.
That was the scene.
Yeah,
And
that's what we
cut.
did.
Now we're here talking to you.
Yeah.
Nice. Like that all happened like 10 minutes before you got here, actually.
Yeah, we
actually
just
just
got in.
escaped.
Yeah. You
Thanks
went
for
back. You escaped twice.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know we said 7:30, but
Yeah, so I mean, like, I guess this is probably one you get a lot, but like what is, like, I guess the thing you like the least in comparison about America?
like what we
Like,
like the
in
least.
comparison to Australia, what I guess, well, I mean, you guys are probably as much experts on Australia as I am on like the United States. So the part of Australia you're from in comparison to Tennessee, like, um what's
Oh, I
like,
see what you're saying.
yeah.
Well, for
He's trying to get us
starters,
to shit on America. or
no,
shit
this
on
is
Australia.
good. We could actually like bring in, we could shed some light on the way things are run somewhere else, and just like throw the idea out there. Like, I think it's stupid that like you have to pay to put air in your tires.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. I
Actually, a lot of my gripes have to do with the roads.
a lot of our gripes have
Yeah.
to do with things that people pay for
like
here that you don't
four-way
need to pay for.
stops should not be a thing.
They're
Like
confusing to us.
have a priority road
or
that-
more roundabout.
that always has the like free
Right
way
way,
because
yeah.
they're the priority, and then the other roads
Is
are
the
the ones that
yields.
are the yields.
Yeah.
So when you get to a T junction, the one that's going straight, the one that's like has the road that's ending, they're
They
the
gotta
ones that
stop.
yields. The ones that still are on the road going, they don't.
They can just go.
They can just keep going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I do understand it
think
when it's
so?
banked up. I understand it when it's banked. There are places that I get where it is, and I'm like, oh,
No,
this
it
is
never
kind of a
makes
good
sense.
system.
Four-way stops just don't make sense.
It's a
like,
good system.
Put a roundabout or put traffic lights.
I do think Tennessee needs to understand that it does snow here sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
And don't ignore that just because it's sometimes you don't need to prepare yourself for the snow and the roads.
Yeah.
And I think maybe
Australia it doesn't really snow, so we're like still getting used to it too.
I think a worldwide thing that everyone should understand is that just because water's coming down from the sky, that doesn't mean you should forget how to drive.
Yeah.
And that's global. That's not.
But
that's
if
not,
spaghetti and meatballs does,
but if
like
spaghetti and meatballs falls out of the sky, get out of your car and open your mouth.
Yeah. That's free
Unless
food.
can't eat, unless you're vegan, then don't. You can probably protest it. And then if you're gluten-free, maybe check if there's a gluten-free area that spaghetti is falling.
I mean, ask someone before you eat.
yeah,
Is this
maybe just check.
gluten-free?
Ask God, is this gluten-free? And he'll be like, it is if it's going to you.
Yeah.
Then he pulls you aside and he says, you weren't here when I created everything. I know you're gluten-free. Why don't you trust me? But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, those are no, you did. Those are my complaints as well, is people should learn how to drive and prepare for ice, because we have, in terms of road upkeep, not just the design and layout, but in upkeep, we're one of like the worst in the nation. Like where are my fucking taxes going? Whoever the senator is, or governor is, I don't even know.
These are universal things. I did have one other thing that I felt like America could try.
Another thing with the roads,
oh yeah,
like this is like crazy to me. Like so many people are on their phones driving, and they're on like the highways on their phones. Like I saw a guy who's like going 80 miles an hour and he's like literally looking at his phone, and I'm like, no. In Australia, like you get like yelled at if you're on your phone driving, and so like we hate it. Like we'll call you a bloody dickhead and like slash your tires if we see you on your phone driving. But
just for any like Australian or metric listeners or viewers, I don't know if you put up video for this, but 80 miles is 128 kilometers
per hour.
Just to you know.
So like real fast, if we cut back to the scene in
Fast and Furious.
80 miles
Fast and Furious.
They're probably That's how fast we were going to
Yeah.
get on the plane to get out.
Yeah,
escape.
actually a lot faster and more furious.
Yeah.
But for another time.
But yeah, that's my last thing about the roads.
I think I did have like one other thing, but now I can't really remember it, so it must be fine. Oh, you know what? Actually, Tennessee, and I don't know if this is nationwide, but like get more tap to pay. Just catch up.
It's fine.
Get more
And
what?
don't worry about checks.
What? Get
And
more.
update. I think get more up to date with money. Like, don't be so
Oh.
scared of currency.
Yeah.
Like the tap to pay.
Tap to
was
pay,
very,
you know,
a-
like
Yeah. I got a tap to pay card. Yeah.
I don't have to type or insert chip. Like, I think get more with it in terms
I mean,
of like
it's
money
less,
technology.
it's less germs, you know, coming out of a pandemic. Just tap to pay
Yeah.
is like fine.
I'm not like anti paper money, but like
I am.
I'm anti-US government, so I
We
just
love
we are
the
not. We love the US government and we're so happy that they let us
Great.
live here. And we love them.
I'm sorry, I'll try not to get you guys deported. Sorry.
Don't worry, you
Fine.
can
Hey,
talk
man.
shit about your own country. They're not
You
gonna
can.
care.
Like they're just like, yeah, whatever. We're gonna let them stay because
Yeah,
they're appreciated.
I'll get
But
deported.
We love
I mean, you're essentially living the American dream. Just let the immigrants do everything,
Yeah.
and you just trash shit.
That
on your
is that is one of my favorite parts
Trash.
about living
trash
here.
shit.
That's one of my favorite parts about living here is I can say fuck the president. Like like I can
Is that
you know,
illegal to say demeaning things about the president?
yeah, absolutely. You just can't threaten his life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah,
threaten-
Country.
but you can threaten intimacy with him.
yeah. Yeah. Just don't assault the president. That's not
No,
good.
I mean,
Alice, don't do that.
yeah, Alice. Just,
I'll carefully
Alex,
caress.
you really pulled up a chair at a very interesting table.
Yeah. So okay, like so the converse question, like what about Australia do you really dislike and you're glad you don't have to deal with anymore?
Oh man, this is back. Oh yeah, geez, I've never had to think about that. Actually, probably if we go back to the roads, I don't miss the like traffic cameras.
Oh yeah, we got a lot of
So
yeah.
actually you guys would not really know what this is, but at every traffic and intersection there would be like a red light
speed
camera
camera, red
or a
light.
speed camera. So if you ran a red or you sped through the intersection, they'll flash your registration and you'll get a fine sent to you like a month later. So just enough time to where you forget that it happened to you.
Yeah, and it's stupid amounts of money too.
And a lot
Too
of
much.
like police like to go in like undercover cars. They'll usually be like a Toyota Camry. And you can tell because they'll have like a big antenna on the back of their car. You're like, oh, that's a cop. And they'll like basically scan.
They have like
and
their radar.
their little radar guns. And like, if you're speeding, they'll send you a ticket. So I don't miss that. I'm really enjoying being able to turn at a red.
Oh yeah, we don't
at
do
a red
that.
light because we don't really do that in Australia.
It's a right turn here, so back home it would be a left turn at a red light. We can't do that. We got to wait for
Some
an
you
arrow
can,
or
some you can. They have the signs where you like can turn if it's safe.
Oh yeah,
But here it's like you can. Like,
I mean,
even if it's a double lane, like
even if it's unsafe and we're coming through, they still apparently think they can turn and be okay with it.
That's like the Wild West out here. Like I was a little worried at first, but I'm used to it now. I think.
Yeah.
It's gonna be weird actually going back to Australia. I feel like we're gonna be like, whoa, like what is happening?
I do think back home Australia needs to get rid of their stupid beautiful beaches and not have nice scenery nearby.
And they're like consistent weather.
They could snow a little more.
Tornadoes.
They could use some tornadoes. But Nashville...
and have a president. Prime Minister's son. President.
I heard about you guys probably know more about this, but I heard about a spider in y'all's backyard that has like it's big and has these big fangs and it like can bite through pants.
In your backyard, man. They're on the dinner table. They're inside too.
Well, it depends what spider. Is that like those man eating
I don't
spiders?
know what
They,
he's
Like,
doing. I'm just
hole-
kind of going
They
with
dig
it.
a hole in the ground and they're really big.
These ones have a neurotoxin that only affects primates, and humans are the only primates native to Australia, right?
I guess. I honestly, I don't know. There are there Australian
I've
like
tapped out of my
monkeys?
nerd.
I don't know how true that is, but it wouldn't surprise me. Um,
I don't know how
Why-
true it
I
is
mean,
either. I'm
they're
just saying
like-
complete nonsense.
but I mean, if you're listening and you're in America, if you do want a pretty good view of what Australia looks like, look out your window, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, gotcha.
Like walk downtown, and it looks
It's-
a lot like an Australian
Yeah.
city too.
We're
so-
actually very similar. But yeah, we do have very nasty insects. You know what it kind of reminds me of? You know the King Kong with Jack Black,
Yeah.
and he finds Skull Island.
Mhm.
That's what I
Yeah.
imagine people that have never been to Australia like.
They think-
That's
Yeah,
what
that's
they
my
think
image
they're
with
up
the skull
to.
and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then because the insects on that island are really big too. I'm pretty sure they
Oh,
have like
yeah.
big spiders.
What
And
about
I'm
like Spy Kids 2? Did you ever see Spy Kids 2?
Oh fuck yeah! With
Yeah.
what's his name?
Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi.
And I feel like
Yes.
that's what people think of Australian animals.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
No,
some
that
like
is-
mad, there's some
you're
mad
right.
scientist, some
You're
huge
absolutely right.
like, and he's in a big lab coat, and he's making these little monkeys crossed with spiders.
But we don't look like that. I really wish we did.
I mean, maybe I wouldn't feel that way if you guys did lose the emus.
I would.
The emu
Breeze will
war.
help. Breeze will help.
Emus are
get rid of the
terrifying.
emus.
There's this park called Cleveland Reserve, and it's meant for tourists, but we went there because it's like an open sort of like park where there's emus walking around and kangaroos and
All sorts.
all sorts of
Wallabies.
Australian animals. And we were like literally the only Australians there, and it was hilarious because we were getting so hyped over the animals.
Yeah,
and
we were
all
getting
the
more
tourists.
excited.
There was like this Swedish family that was like looking at us really
like,
confused.
You sound like natives, don't
Don't you live
what's-
here? Like, why are you getting so hyped over
like? Yeah, this is a
But
kangaroo.
you can walk right up to the emus with like their food, and their beaks just stare right at your eyes,
and their eyes are red and it's scary.
they're really
Whoa.
terrifying, but they are kind of funny looking too, but they are terrifying. But the kangaroos were hilarious because they were just like lying on the grass like in groups, just like all sprawled out and like just chilling, and they'll just like watch you, and you just walk up to them and you just put your hand out, and then they'll just like start eating and then just look away like thank you.
Yeah.
And
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, it was pretty fun. But yeah, I agree, emus are terrifying.
Mhm.
I've hit one and it was interesting.
Like with a vehicle?
Yeah, with my vehicle.
No, just with her hands.
Beat the shit out of
I
one.
just straight up uppercut to the face. Like,
Nice.
Actually, she headbutt the emu.
I
That was
beat-
on that was
with my
on the
vehicle.
way to the plane where you drove really fast.
Yeah,
and
she had to
furious.
beat the emu.
it was
It
the
was
scene.
actually more than one. It was like 20 of them.
You know the scenes, like they always do that in a plane chase. Like I was running behind and you were like flying like quick.
Yeah, I was like, "Hurry up, Breeze!
And I'm
we gotta
on the
get out of
emu.
here."
I was on the emu riding it, and I'm like, you can't come to America.
The dome over Australia was about to close. That's what they mean by the borders shut.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, the force field dome.
Yeah, it was like we had to do that Indiana Jones thing as well. Like her hat fell off out of the back of the plane and she had to get it right before it shut.
This
so,
exact hat.
Yeah.
This
Nice.
like we're not even lying. This is the truth. It
yeah.
happened half an hour ago.
We would never lie to you, Alice.
Yeah, Alice. And I'm sure this isn't the craziest thing you've ever heard, Alice.
I honestly think Alice left. I'm not sure.
She's probably
She might
asleep,
come back.
So how do you think people came to be, like versus primates, I guess, other primates? Take it from there.
Like, how did we
exist?
How did we come into existence?
Yeah, humans specifically.
Mm.
I mean, everyone can open up the nearest Bible and read Genesis, and it really helps if you read it literally. I'm sorry, that was a bit silly for a serious question.
We just switch into serious mode now.
It's hard to go into serious mode with a question
I
like
was
that.
literally
Yeah.
writing a few, and then I got my hat. And
Yeah,
then,
and now we're talking about the existence of humanity.
You know, Um, I think there's a lot of truth in the Adam and Eve story, um, in a sense, as we discussed. And I think that is actually part of our origin story, you know, not taking it super literally.
Well, it wasn't the thing that is interesting about, like, I think, man, I've had this thought for such a long time. Like, when we open a novel or any kind of book, like, we kind of know how to read that. But for some reason, the same literary themes and designs that are in that novel, when we open up a book like the Bible, apparently we forget what any of those things are. We forget metaphor, we forget poetry,
Right.
we forget allegory, we forget everything because this book fell out of the sky.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's so funny that, like, there are a
And
lot
only
of
recently, only recently too.
yeah, and I think we know too much. We have, and it's kind of funny that we're talking about the Adam and Eve story because, like, I think we are constantly every day taking a bite of that apple, so to speak, of just like trying to acquire knowledge without God, like, and just
Oh,
trying to take
yeah.
things without God, and instead of like receiving things from God, because it's like, yeah, there's like nothing in that story that says they couldn't learn things and they couldn't have knowledge. It was just
Yeah.
like they just can't take it for themselves.
Mm.
God was never saying, I'm not going to give you this. It was, don't take it.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
I
like
love that. I love that. It's I
it,
yeah, I hate the idea of a cult because it's this elitism,
mhm.
separation. Even if like, you know, as a Christian you're a servant. You're giving of yourself. And that's such a beautiful thing, first of all. But where I come up from, it's like you know, you knock on someone's door and they yell at you. That hardens your faith. That is a persecution. Your faith is being tested. And
Mm.
um I lost my point on that. But yeah, people take it very literally and it defiles the message. But yeah, so to get back a little bit, um what do you how do you think people came to be, as and I mean that in the sense of like separated from animal?
Mm. Like why are we different to animals?
I suppose, yeah, yeah, what would cause that change? What is the missing link?
Well, I think a key thing, like if we're saying like we believe in God and like the Bible is kind of a book that is telling a story of why we're created, we're learning about his character just like we do in relationships with people, we learn about people. um a key thing in, I guess, our origin story is he created us in his image or his likeness. So just like you would say about maybe like a family, it's like you can be like, oh, you can tell we're siblings because we kind of like have the same mannerisms or we talk the same or there's just a likeness to us. So I do believe when God created us, it was purposeful. It was kind of like a saying like, here's your environment that is all for you. Like here's animals, here's food, here's source, you know, and here's a way to be creative. And that's all the things that I did. And here's like how I did it, you know, now go and do the same because you're like an image of me. And which I think is a really cool thing because it's just like, who wouldn't want that? Like, oh, hey, here's everything. Now go have fun. Like, and
Yeah.
you know, and I want to be a part of that process. You know, what are you building? What are you thinking? Like,
Yeah.
can I give you some wisdom on it? Because, you know, I kind of made the thing, you know, so it's like I could help you out. And like, so I think what kind of made us different is like he made everything for us in the sense of like that you would say, um like a father does to a child, or mother does for a child. Like, you set up an environment, and I do kind of believe like he does view us as like his children, and
Yeah.
something he cherishes and like really loves. So part of his likeness is goodness and love and purpose and beauty, because you kind of look at creation and you're like, wow, that's like a really pretty sunset, you know. Or
Yeah.
even people, you kind of look at a person and you're like, wow, like you're really cool and like cool to be around, you're nice, you're comfortable. Like, I believe like that's our true sort of image and true reflection of God.
Yeah.
That's also why we get very disappointed or hurt when that reflection isn't being reflected. You know, it's like we intrinsically inside us know our value, and when that value is being undermined, that's where we get hurt, and that's where we never like feeling or being projected on from that place where it's like undermining our value, which I do think like in like organized religion where that's the problem. It's because it's missing the whole point of like, if a higher being that is all powerful and all knowing and all loving, you know, and omnipotent, like is just crazy smart and way better than we'll ever be, and can be like, here's something I made for you because I love you and there's purpose for you, and I want you to live out a life that I created in goodness. Like, that, I think we get stuck there because we look at the world and we don't really see that. So we're kind of a bit like, what, like me, you know? But we do get senses of it, you know? We get senses of it where someone smiles at us when we're having a bad day and we feel home, you know?
Yeah.
Or we feel a connection with someone, or we're creating and we feel like we're in the zone. Like we do get, you know,
Yeah.
fragments of that. And I was
just gonna say, those are two beautiful examples. Being in the zone, which is this in streamlined activity, zero ego, just what athletes do, like top tier athletes, and this tapped in source kind of stuff. And then also what you said, just the smile. You have no idea just how much a smile can do to like a stranger at the grocery store or something. It's like, well, not a creepy smile, Alice. Don't be weird.
Don't be like staring at someone and being like,
that'll make their day, that'll impact their day in a different way.
Yeah, Alice, stop biting your lip. I'm just here to buy strawberries.
Don't stand too close to me in line. I can hear breathing. Too close.
Yeah, I can hear you breathing.
But yeah, it's like, it's something I try to be like mindful of, because I'm aware, like if I'm not smiling and you're just kind of like in your own whatever, like I've got that resting bitch face where it looks like I want to kill you, but I don't. I'm really like nice and friendly.
She's actually pondering.
I'm pondering.
Where did we come from and why do we exist?
I'm pondering like, how did I get off that emu and get my hat at the same time?
That's crazy.
Coming,
my Indiana Jones.
I also suffer from resting bitch face. I understand.
Yeah. So it's like I try to be like more mindful of, if I lock eyes with someone, like just smile. And because you don't know, like, you don't know what's going on inside. And I feel like most of our world is inside our mind. Like most of what we experience is in secret. And that's why I think like environment is everything, and like trying to work in the opposite spirit of like, if someone is, you know, depressed or anxious or feeling very isolated or just confused, like trying to be the opposite to that, I think is a very powerful thing.
Would you say you believe in free will? And if so, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, definitely, because I believe it's not real love if you don't have choice. Because love without choice, like we never even like that idea in any relationship of like, oh, you are only gonna love me if I do what you say. Like that's not love. So I think definitely free will. and love have to kind of coexist, which means
Well, if God's loving,
Mhm.
which he is, then of course, like, there has to be free will, because if he's loving, and I think another thing, like, with the whole free will discussion is, it is hard for us to comprehend what that actually is without thinking about terrible things, and then wanting to, like, be like, oh, so, like, God can't be this good because look at all these terrible things happening. And I think people confuse, maybe, what free will maybe actually is, and what free will might look like in their head if they were God. In a way of, like, God's not sitting there orchestrating things to the T of, like, you're going to take this step and this breath. It's like, hey, I've given you legs and I've given you nose and a mouth. Use those things.
I don't mind.
Use those things, and I've given you a brain.
If you want to use it, go for it. If not,
Use it.
well, it's up
Like,
to you.
train yourself to walk. Breathing, I've actually put that in you, so you always know how to do that, because you will forget to breathe. Has anyone ever worked out and finished a set and realized, oh, I should have been breathing? It's crazy.
Well, I mean, we rarely relax our jaw.
Yeah.
We got to remind ourselves of that.
But I think, like,
Uh-huh.
I think free will is, like, I think it's not always how we expect it to be, and we can, I think all humans can be kind of like, we get pretty shocked when we find out we're even a little bit wrong in something, and not wrong in the sense like we did bad at not knowing something, but it's like, I think we sometimes get surprised when we find out something that kind of contradicts what we think. It's just like a similar process of, like, you have an idea of somebody. It's just like, if you'd never spoken to us after that show, you may have had, like, these ideas of what we might be like as people, judged by what you saw us perform on stage.
They look really angry.
Yeah, these people are angry, and they're always yelling at me, and they're walking past hi-hat stands, and these things are just falling over. Like, did she push it? Didn't she push it? She didn't. But then, like,
That was chaos.
I don't know if, like, when you talked to us and met us, like, you maybe went through a thing of, like, oh, they're, like, kind of a little bit different to what I thought they would be. And that would have shocked you a little bit, not to the sense of, like, you're fake, but, like,
Yeah.
they're just being,
they're way different.
oh,
Yeah,
you
like, almost been,
your
I hate to
people,
say it.
not this
Yeah.
xenophobic caricature that I have in my mind of I know, I'm from Australia. Oh, that's British. That's like Cockney. I can't even.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It was
okay.
not bad. Yeah, I think free will is a huge topic, and it's a way expanded version of the silly little surface level thing.
I think it was fine. Like, you chose the words you wanted to choose.
I had the free will to describe it in my dumb way, and that kind of worked for me.
No,
so I don't know.
I'm with you. I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily not believe in free will, but I was shown on a DMT trip once that is when I say shown, I take this with a grain of salt. This was a psychedelic experience that is really not credible in any means, but I had this profound understanding in a divine sense, not in the way that could be explained to me, but shown to me, that we are all one. We're all God, and he comes down into different bodies. So I think the soul that drives me is identical to the soul that drives you. And what's different is the experiences and the biology. But I think the souls are identical. So I don't know what happens after this. I don't know if we get to retain ego and be an individual, or maybe it's a nirvana, or maybe a mixture. Like maybe we return to the Godhead or something. But The way I see that, that was a vision I had, but a drug influenced vision, but it also makes sense to me. I think this is what Christ was saying when he says he's the Son of God. He's saying that I am God made flesh. And it where a lot of organized religion gets it wrong is he's not saying me, I'm God, I'm flesh. He's saying we're God. Treat everybody the way you want to be treated because that's you. And um Alan Watts said something about this as well, where he's like, Christ said that we're all God and they killed him for it.
Yeah.
And but I really think Lennon said it best. I am he, as you are he, as you are me, and we are one and we are all together.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Uh that's what makes sense to me. Now I don't necessarily think that there's not free will. Um, but I think that's the process. So you could say that's free will or not, I suppose. Um, the big question there for me then at that point is why. Um, and I think Zoroastrianism has the best answer I've heard. This is something I've gotten into recently. Um, but it's a very old religion. It predates the Torah by an amount of time. And it's from Persia, I believe. Um, and it's a very simple good and evil story. I'm going to give a very botched, simplified for dummies version, but
Mhm.
like
You're speaking,
Wikipedia version.
speaking our language.
Yeah. But like you have a good god and you have a bad god. For argument's sake, we'll call them yin and yang. One is eternally evil, one's eternally good, and they exist separate. We could say heaven and hell. And the creator God makes the physical universe knowing that the dark one's going to infiltrate it, but he did that as a trap so that he could come down and interact with the evil God and convert it, make it see the light. So that to me is really beautiful because even if it's not literally true, what that says is the point of life is literally turn the other cheek, be kind to people even when they don't deserve it. And to me, that is true, even if it's in a metaphorical sense. The point of life is to be good to people. And that answers my own question as to why. So if like we're all God, why are we here? It's like, well, maybe that's why this God's here, but there's also this other force that we're interacting with. And I don't think it's like you have good people and bad people. I think it's on your shoulders. You have this battle takes place on the inside. And it's like
Mhm.
when someone does something bad to you, um, you don't really have too much control over that. But if you perpetrate evil back into the world, all they've dragged you to hell with them, metaphorically or literally. And it's like if you could, turn the other cheek and be kind and show them the light, then at that point you've dragged them to heaven. You've raised their vibration in that sense. That to me is the point of life. And I only say all that to we were talking about free will. I don't necessarily think that means there's not free will, but I think this is all sort of a game, but it's a game with consequence. Like it's a game that matters. There's really high stakes
Yeah.
uh, of good and evil, a tale that exists before people.
And it's interesting that you say that because it does sound very similar to the Christian religion. The only difference is the God, Jesus that came to earth was God, man in flesh. And the whole reason he came was to defeat the power of darkness. So basically defeat death. Because at that time, death had infiltrated the world. So we essentially were like God, had everything good. And when the rebellion was we took instead of received, that allowed our sinful nature to come in. So like the power of darkness to come in. So we kind of like fell from our position. So God, if you actually kind of read all through the Bible, you see kind of a lead up to Jesus of just people failing. They will always weren't, they just missed the mark all the time. So God himself had to come in as man. And the point of the crucifixion, which was, you know, the gnarliest death back then, he died and rose himself from death because he is God, and God is light, and God is life. He's the source of life. So he basically, in one action, took all the judgment that we all deserve. So you think like this has happened way in the past. When he's dying, he's thinking of you, he's thinking of me, he's thinking of him, and all of the wrong that we're going to do, all the missing the mark, the not trusting in God, the trying to figure out life on our own, all the pain that we go through because of that consequence, you know.
All of the dragging other people
All of the dragging
through hell
other
instead of
people,
turning the other cheek.
you know, all of that stuff. And he basically took that on himself, and broke that power. So the only difference with what you were saying and what Jesus is and what he represents is he won that battle. So that battle is actually over. And he kind of, what he did was when he ascended in heaven, is he said, I'm going to come back one day. What that means is this period of time between death being defeated to when he comes back is his way of being like, everyone that is created is so important, and I don't want them to perish, and everyone has the chance to be redeemed through me. So through what I did. So when you're saying that I believe in God, I believe in Christ and like what he did, and you're kind of making that declaration and truly making that within your heart, like what you're kind of doing is being transferred from a spiritual death to spiritual life. It's like you're being redeemed back to your rightful place, which is having connection with God again, being right with him again. And that's, I think, the most powerful thing, because that's what we are all trying to achieve, because I really truly believe that that connection with God is so integrated within us deep down that that's what we are always seeking. That's why we gravitate so much to all these different things that we read, and why it's a lot, like if you do read a lot of the ancient stuff, the stories sound the same. You know, you even like watch the Marvel movies, it's always the same story. There's a savior that's coming to save humanity. Like this thing is so ingrained within us because it is our story.
Yes. Yes.
Really, that really is the power of Jesus, is he basically defeated death and the power that it had over us out of love, because we didn't really deserve that kind of love. And the idea of receiving that forgiveness, we're not, why we do that to extend to others is because we didn't deserve that forgiveness. So why do we think that we have the right to hold forgiveness with others? The key is though, is if you're spiritually in darkness, why should you even care about anything that God has to say? But if you are in spiritual life and back to where you are rightfully meant to be, that is kind of like a burden that you carry. It's you become like this new creation. It's like you become what you're meant to be, you know, this person that has free will, but you have the ability to not entertain the darkness, and because it doesn't have its like grip in you anymore. And that's the power of Jesus and rising from the dead. And that's the one key thing, that there's so much power in that. It's a redemption story that is real.
I couldn't agree with you more when you said that when you read it, the reason it resonates so strongly is because it's about you. And like to me it's about it's a book written by me, about me, for me. in mind. And yeah, it's a crazy thing. There's a reason we are still talking about it to this day. Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
um,
Jesus is
so
like one of the most influential men of all time that truly did exist. And there's never been more literature done on him. There's never been
he's got the
art
most
done on him, like music written about him, whether it's like Christian or non-Christian. Like he's the most talked about
figure
figure in
in
history
existence.
because
Yeah.
it was literally God as man. It was like the only manifestation of where you could stare God in the face, you know. And the thing is when you become a believer, like you decide to give your heart and your life to Jesus, like you receive his spirit. So his spirit dwells in you, and his spirit is like a guidance. It's a counselor, it's an advocate, it's a comforter, it's a connection with God again. So you don't have to endure suffering the same because you're not under the power of that darkness anymore. It's not saying, kind of like Job, he was able to be in that suffering, but that suffering didn't overcome him because he had a direct line to God. And it's the same as what we can experience today by just kind of coming to that place of being like, you know what? I'm not good at this life thing. Like, I can't make decisions. I don't know anything. And I am really, truly seeking answers on why I'm here. What's my purpose? Why am I important? Because all this can't just be random. And I can't just be here for no reason. And there is a reason why you're here. It's because you're cherished. Like long before time even existed, you were a thought and you were knit together, and you have a book that is written on your life. And the thing is like, you got to sometimes jump into that story, and that story has God with it, and that's who you can talk to, and he talks back all the time.
what do you think's next? What do you is I guess, what does the afterlife look like to you? What do you think they'll be like?
I kind of think about it in how Eden is described before the fall is like what it's become to be known as, like the fall moment. I think what Eden talks about before that moment happens, I think is a pretty good representation of what is to kind of come next, is that that like really good place again.
Where there's no sorrow, there's no pain, there's no
we don't have to
tears.
we don't have to sweat over our work. We don't have to struggle the way we struggle here. Like,
Do you think it
we
would
don't have
still
to-
be kind of like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you
That's
think it
fine.
would be is it so it would be like more or less tangible, like, and kind of like physical in a way, like garden?
I
I think it'll be
I
like
think-
now, like
I
the
think-
world.
I
Just
think I think we both share this in our view of like what heaven isn't, how it's kind of sometimes representative of like our souls are taken out of our bodies and we're being transported to somewhere else. I think if you read the Bible in the view of like it's a story about restoration, I think where we live is going to also be restored. So whether that means literally our Earth we're still going to be on our actual planet or whatever, I don't know that far, but I think it's going to look a lot like the things that we crave and the things that we wish for here. Like, man, I wish there wasn't all that bullshit. I wish I didn't have to suffer through that.
I wish there wasn't death.
I wish there wasn't this physical death. I wish my family member didn't have that cancer. Like, I wish I wasn't seeing this racial tension everywhere all the time. I wish I wasn't experiencing this pain.
I wish I wasn't isolated or alone.
I think we're going to be in a place that doesn't have those things anymore. And we get to experience like full joy and just like full on goodness that
full
probably
love.
is like, I heard a really nice thing of like when you look at the sunset and you admire it, like heaven is like a billion times more of what that is.
It's like trying to imagine perfection. Like it's so hard. Like you're like, I think I could kind of wrap my mind around something being perfect, but there's still that like, but I'm not really sure because it's like,
because we don't know
because it's
totally
hard because it's
perfect.
sort of like it's like we cap on our mind and our knowledge, you know. It's like this, but we do get moments of it where we experience joy, like, you know, someone smiles at us when we had like a bad day, and then you're just kind of like, oh, okay, that person was a stranger and I had no idea like the day I'm having, and that kind of was comforting. It's kind of like those small moments, but then just think forever.
Kind of like, you know how you go through those good moments of life and you're like, all right, but when's it going to get bad? Imagine not even needing to anticipate that when's it going to get bad. I feel like it's somewhere along the lines of that. I don't know whether it's, I guess
we'll have to see.
Part of me like can kind of see that it would be physical, but I could be wrong, and that's kind of like, I'm in a place where it's like whether it is or isn't kind of going to, like, I don't think I'd be disappointed. I'm not going to be like, oh god, I thought this was going to be physical and it's not, so that kind of sucks.
Probably not capable of being disappointed at that point. Yeah
exactly.
Yeah,
so
you forget about what's disappointment. Like,
yeah. What do you think there's do you believe in a hell, or does everyone just cease to exist that isn't there, or does everyone go there?
I think like how it's described in the Bible of like hell is just separation from God. And the way I kind of like viewing it is like everything sort of is meshed together. So we're in the now, the past and the present. You have like, you know, how you were describing like the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. And I kind of see them as veils, you know, that we're all kind of meshed together. So we either, you know, say we like cuss someone out in traffic, we're kind of tapping into the kingdom of darkness there, you know, because our intentions aren't for good for that person. Our intentions are kind of bitter and to insult someone. Whereas like the light sort of tapping into the kingdom of light would be like, you know what, man, like you go about your day, like I'm cool here, you know, wish you the best, but you actually mean it.
But
like,
actually meaning it.
You know, your intention.
Bless you, but actually bless you, not bless you.
And kind of like, I guess, going back to, you know, God is love. His essence is love. Part of love is there needs to be choice. He's not going to force anyone to be connected to him, just like how we wouldn't want without relationships. Like, I think everyone gets a little creeped out if someone's like, you have to be with me, and if you don't be with me, like, I'm gonna send you to a place, you know.
That's an abusive relationship.
We get out like our little red flags, like, and we tell all our friends, stay away from
like
them.
Hey friend, I think you should try and leave that if you can.
And I don't think like God's like that at all. He's just kind of like, you know what, I love you, like my love for you is set. You can keep screwing up in life and whatever you want, but like I need you with me, you know.
It's funny you say that. Like, especially Old Testament, God's friends, his faithful, things don't usually go too well for him, but it's not about physical rewards, you know. It's about the service itself is the reward, is the lesson a lot of the time in those stories. But like Moses, you know, kind of gets the short end of the stick. Abraham, right?
I learned something really cool about Moses because I kind of never understood this, like kind of reading it as a kid and then as like a teenager. I kind of like was always confused as to why he never got, like, why does he never get to see like this promised land? Why is he kind of like barred from it? And like you can see it from a distance, but you'll never be there. All because he hit a rock again, you know? But it's like the importance of that action. So in very short, the story goes, the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness. They were thirsty. And God told Moses, hit this rock and water will come gushing out of it. I'm making the water come out of this rock. Hit it. And you guys will have water. And he does it. And then there's a second time they're like thirsty again, and they're like, Moses, we're thirsty. Why did God take us out of Egypt? At least we had water there. Like, we were oppressed, but at least we could eat more than what we're eating now, kind of thing.
Miserable, but
We were miserable, but at least we were something and somewhere. And then so Moses goes back to God. He's like, my people are thirsty. God says, yeah, I know. I'm adding a few of my own little things in.
Little ad libs. Yeah.
But then he says, like, speak to the rock. Like, tell the rock, not Dwayne Johnson, the rock, but tell this rock that, like, speak to it and it will burst.
Johnson's just there, like, at your service.
Yeah, that comes gushing out of Dwayne Johnson. No, but it's like, speak to the rock and then water will come out of it. And he gets, like, Moses, his, like, moment is that he gets really impatient with his people and gets so frustrated at them that he speaks to the rock, and then out of anger, he smacks the rock with his staff. And like, something I learned about that story is like kind of what he did potentially ruined what God's story of salvation says, in that something only needs to be defeated and conquered one time. Like, it's not something that God has to do again and again for us. It's like, this is a one-time conquering, and you don't need me to redeem you in that way of like, I don't have to keep saving your life again and again and again. I got to do this one time because that's how, like, powerful I am. And I thought, like, when I read that, I thought that was like really cool, because it was like, oh, God cares a lot about this message. Like, this salvation message is really important.
And Moses nearly ruined it.
Moses chose to react out of anger, and that little action could have potentially somewhere down the line, and I think kind of has, messed and skewed up this story of what salvation's supposed to be, in the sense of God can conquer something one time, not, all right, I've just saved New York City from this villain and along comes the next one and I guess I got to do it again. It's like not that Marvel story where we even need to recruit new heroes to defeat these villains that keep popping up. It's like, this is a one-time thing. And like, I think part of what we need to, I guess, as like a believer, part of what I need to remember is like, this thing was conquered for me one time, and I kind of need to start stepping into what that means for me, and not always like falling back into, this is getting really hard and I'm just going to keep, like, I guess I'm going to have to keep getting saved all the time. And it's like, I think part of what my job as a believer, if you want to kind of word it like that, is like
a servant.
Part of my job as a servant is to like know, like, what was done for me, and like what that kind of means, as like Breeze mentioned before, as like a new creation. It's like kind of having to like unlearn habits that kind of kept putting me in torment, or like kept making me mess up, reacting out of anger and all that stuff. Is like, that
it's learning how to love.
Yeah, learning how to love
unselfishly.
Yeah, and I learned that about that Moses story of like, it wasn't being punished because he did the wrong thing. It was, I told you to just speak to it, not like hit it. And now because of that, you don't get to experience this thing, because I guess in a way, in his mind, he's viewing their salvation in not a totally honest way of the way God is trying to tell them what their salvation actually is, because he's like, I got you out. You don't have to keep going back there.
Yeah, I didn't know that about that story, and I think that adds a lot of context to it. The way I was taught growing up, which is, I feel like, is oversimplified. What you're saying actually makes a lot more sense. But I thought, my understanding as a kid was that he was barred from the promised land because he took credit for it. Like he instead of giving credit to God.
Mm.
The same incident with the rock. But what you're saying makes a lot. I like that because it's more about it. It's kind of like an explanation for why there aren't miracles again, right? Like well, there are miracles that happen every day, but not these miraculous splitting the Red Seas kind of things. um and
Right.
it's like, why do I need to keep repeating myself? You don't need a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's times where like Moses is going to God and asking him things, and God's saying, you should know this actually. And I think if you're reading it, trying to point out where God is mean, you're going to say, oh, that's not very nice. And he's not very patient. But it's like, if you want to view if you want to view it in terms of relationship, like how kind of like, how many times has maybe a friend or a sibling or just someone close to you asked you the same thing that like they at
Should
that
know about
point
you.
they kind of should know about you, like,
Like,
and
where's the
not in a way,
trust?
and not in a way of like, you should know this about me, don't you ever ask me again. But it's like we should be at a point now where we know each other, and if I know you and you know me, there are maybe some things that we don't necessarily have to keep checking in on.
Hmm.
Oh, like, what do I do, how do I move? It's like, you know me, so you kind of know what I would want in this. I want people to know that I love them, and um so don't ask me, because I think you do know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we've established, evil exists.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I
That's a good,
guess,
that's a good circle back.
yeah. Thank you. That's my segue. It just goes 180 degrees.
I love it.
uh
Right on any
but
new.
We
it
talked a
it
lot about evil existing though, so that's kind of
yeah.
cool.
Something I one of my rhetorics I talk about a lot is, I think morality and intelligence are intertangled, meaning basically you can be really intelligent and be immoral, but you would be smarter if you would be nice. If you were nice, you'd be smarter if you were nice. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is, like, when you're mean to someone or you do something evil, it's not just immoral, it's stupid.
Yeah.
Because there's no way, if you get in a fight with someone at the bar and you hit them, uh you have no idea. That doesn't stop there. You have no
Yeah.
idea what they're going to take home. They might go hit their kids, you know. And it's
Yeah.
like,
The chain reaction.
you cannot ever like a butterfly effect. Yeah, so you cannot ever understand the depths of the ripple that's going to cause. So it's stupid at all to put evil out.
Yeah.
um and it's stupid because even if you don't give a fuck about that person, it will come back to bite you.
Yeah, and I also believe like the opposite is true too. Like you put
Yeah,
out more love.
the
Um,
smile. Yeah.
you don't know the chain reaction of that either.
Mm.
And that's where I guess the free will is. It's like, where do you want to hang out today? Like,
Yeah.
and it's not so much to like always be kind of like keeping tabs on yourself, because you know you also have to be human, you also have to be emotional and like handle emotions. But I think like what God teaches is how to really understand our nature, and how to understand how he designs everything, and how to just function as that, as a human, you know.
Mm.
And I think that's why I really love Jesus, is because he was human. And you know, like he's fully God, but he's also fully human, which means he experienced everything that we could possibly feel, like that we feel every day. Like he had to sit with people knowing that, who were like his closest friends, knowing that they were all going to like betray him one day, but he had to spend 3 years with them, teaching them and loving them. And so it's like you kind of look at those little moments being like, oh, whoa, okay, so you're kind of highlighted in a very small way how I should handle close people around me betraying me, you know.
Yeah.
And okay, so I give love, but it doesn't mean I don't feel those things, but it's like, what are my actions to that?
Mm.
So I think it's like this, you know, he had to also experience losing a father, you know, he had to experience losing friends. Like, he experienced all the possible things that we have experienced. So I think God really understands us, you know, and like wants to always help and rescue us from our torment,
Yeah.
particularly
And I
because
think most people, like, evil does exist for sure. Real evil. We can give a name, like personify it. Um and but I do think it's rare in people. I think most people think they're doing the right thing and they're just misguided. Most people don't want to be bad. They're just either and when they are bad, it's not their fault. Forgive them, Lord. They don't know not what they do.
that's a
Like,
very hard lesson to learn, but it's I think, a really powerful lesson.
yeah, it's like what they're doing is an effect of what has been done to them.
Mhm.
And it's a cycle that, you can't, like we were talking about earlier, you can't control what happens to you, but it can stop with you. You don't have to, or you can
Yeah.
take it and make art. You can transform it and put it back out,
Mm.
alchemize it into something else.
Mm. And
Um,
yeah, God, like, he is in the restoration business. Like, he can restore you from your pain, and at the same time he's also a gentleman. Like, he's not going to like storm in there and fix all your problems, because I mean, how annoying are those people? Like, you're trying to vent with someone and they give you advice straight up and you're like, I didn't
Yeah.
ask for advice, I just wanted to vent. Like, God's very
yeah.
much the same way. Like, he'll watch you in your brokenness and desperately wants to mend you because he can. And I think when it
But
comes
he
to
won't
like,
unless you're
yeah,
like,
I think when it
can
comes
you?
to like emotional wounds, particularly, like, they're some of the hardest wounds to heal. And I don't think we can. Which
Although,
I think
yeah.
is why we get in these cycles, because it's just like we're trying to mend something that was broken. And I really do believe only God can fix that. And he's very close to broken hearts because he knows he can mend it. And I think that mending helps us be able to kind of like be beamed out of that funk that we're in, like, not trying to downplay like people's pain, but I think sometimes we can get into this like cycle and we can't get out of it, and it's because we need our hearts healed because they're broken. And I do believe, like, when he heals that, it makes us, it one gives us the intelligence of, okay, I've been through some shit, and so I know what it feels like, so it makes us more empathetic towards people that are going through things.
Mm.
But also it allows us to be able to love truly, you know, especially the people that are very hard to love because they are so evil. You know, like, God says to love your enemies and pray for people who persecute you.
Yep.
Where is that being encouraged in today's world? Like, that's the most radical thought, if there was one. Like, who wants to love their enemies or pray for people that just
It's not
constantly?
easy.
Mm.
Something
It's
I'm coming to understand as I get older is no one in the history of ever has ever gotten away with anything.
Yeah.
Yep, it's true.
It all comes back around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um this this is for both of you guys. When was the last time you cried?
This morning. Yep. Because in prayer time, I was convicted of some things. It was like happy crying. It wasn't like sorrow crying.
For me, it was last night. I saw Princess and the Frog, which I hadn't seen since I was a kid.
I cry in those movies too, and you're always like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess it was a lot of things, but I'm kind of a person that's like, I don't cry when something happens. I tend to like just process it, like, I process it until it's usually when I'm listening to a piece of music or like watching something, and then it's like everything just comes up,
Yeah.
I think
Taps into the hidden things.
think I think the most recent cry is I teared up at something nice my girlfriend told me, and yeah, I think that was the last time
You
I
two are
cried.
softies. I like it.
We are. We're
Aw.
very soft. We're very emotional, and we have a tough front. Mine is less.
I was talking about both of you because he cried at Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about the.
Oh, yeah,
I'm talking
yeah.
about the four of us.
I've got resting bitch face, but I'll cry in Disney
Yeah.
movies too.
Oh man, you know what? I cry in Disney movies all the time. I think.
Normalize crying in Disney movies.
Do you know what?
Princess and the Frog's my favorite. Yeah.
I cried in Big Hero 6.
That's a good one.
I cried at the
Love that
start,
one.
and you know what? I'm annoyed at Disney because they just did the same rinse and repeat story that they always do,
And it got you.
and it got me. I was like, "You're really doing
That's
this
hilarious.
to a character? I don't even care about the character they got rid of,
Remember?
but I care about the person who lost that character." And I'm just,
Do you remember when we were watching Christopher Robin and like we were both crying in it, but it was like we both just like kind of did this slow turn to see if we were both crying, and then
Just-
we both just had tears.
Niagara Falls.
We couldn't stop laughing.
Oh my god, that's like Frozen. I'm sitting there the whole time like this, and then
Yeah.
fucking Olaf is like, some people are worth melting for, and I just melt, and I'm like, I don't even give a fuck about this annoying little piece of shit snowman till just now.
I
Just
know.
now.
Actually, that snowman was my favorite part of that movie. I wish the singing was better. It would be great to watch.
I haven't seen it yet, so
It's not my favorite, but it's good. You know, they're all that's the thing about Disney is they're all
I
at
will
least
admit-
watchable.
It didn't live up to the hype I was expecting from it,
there was a lot of hype.
but
Yeah.
wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just kind of wish personal preference, I wish some of the singing was a lot better than what I was hearing.
I got one more, and then I think Alice it's probably past your bedtime at this point.
I think she's been asleep for the past half
yeah.
hour. That's cool.
But what do you think about I used to ask people if they believed in aliens, and it seems like everyone's like, yeah, they got to be out there somewhere, most of the time. So what I've been asking people now is, do you think we've ever had aliens interact with Earth, or are they currently?
Or like if they're real.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I think Mark Zuckerberg's one.
Very well,
He's
maybe. I mean,
so
look at that
hard to
dude.
be human, and he's so bad at it. Like,
He's really bad at it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think aliens are people that are trying really hard to be human.
Reptiles. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
No,
know.
I'm kind of with you there.
Aliens. So
It's,
I don't know.
I didn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know when I think about aliens, because the only alien knowledge I have is
E.T..
like Stranger Things, which is a made-up story and it's not a documentary.
what if it was?
But the documentaries that I have kind of seen are the ones that they put on the History Channel at like 3 a.m. So I don't know how.
Aliens.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't. And
I am a human.
And then you kind of,
Nice to meet you.
yeah, I think the problem, personally, the problem I have with a lot of things, and I'm going to
You have a funny accent.
I'm gonna foolishly dump aliens in the conspiracy
What?
hat for
I'm
the
not
moment.
an alien. I am a human.
I'm gonna foolishly dump them into a conspiracy
I'm gonna
hat
just keep
because,
going.
like, yeah, I know
Sorry.
you are. I know you are. I'm expecting it. I just think, like,
Next show. Hello. I play the drums. Boom boom.
That's what aliens were like. It's like, let me finish.
let me finish.
You're witnessing a bunch
I
of
just
aliens
like
right
I
now.
honestly, when it comes to aliens, I'm like, I don't know.
My cousin thinks
What
they're
I do think though is, if there were, right, I don't think they are shaped like humans, and I don't think they're green.
I think they're octopuses or jellyfish.
I don't think I think it's egotistical of humans to think that aliens are just different colored
Yeah.
versions of a figure of them
What?
without hair.
Might not be carbon based at all. Might not even look like physical in that sense. Yeah.
They're
I think
ants.
I think a closer
Aliens are
I think the
ants.
closest and possibly most accurate representation of an alien is
A Bug's
in
Life.
that movie Monsters vs. Aliens, the blob that Seth Rogen voices could be
Aliens is just phlegm.
him. I know he's a
Yeah.
monster in that movie, but I think he could be an alien.
I think you cracked the case. That's
Hmm.
it.
But
Hey,
I
put
don't
us
heard
know.
on
it here
any
first,
place,
Alice.
Crack it within
We'll
5
crack all the
minutes
cases.
guarantees. 5 minutes guaranteed.
And we'll crack all the cases, and we don't need evidence or facts. We'll just figure it out in our brains.
Yeah.
Just
Where-
like everyone.
Because we are not aliens. We are
Yeah.
human.
I'm gonna start a segment called Ask an Australian. It'll be you'll give you guys your own corner. And
All right.
Please
Man,
do.
you know what? We'll do it.
You know
Okay.
what? Like,
Okay, bet Alice. You
We'll
got
do it.
we will do it. Just bring
Alice,
us on.
we'll do it, Alice.
And we'll crack the case 5 minutes guaranteed. No
Stop
longer.
rolling your eyes, Alice. We will do it.
Yeah, Alice.
Believe us.
whether you
Gave
like it or not,
Alice.
it's happening.
Michael gave you those drugs.
Why don't you believe me, Alice? Believe me.
Thank you both so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having
yeah,
us.
thank you for having us. And yeah, please do that Ask an Australian because we like hanging out with
Oh,
you.
Yeah,
I like the way
mean,
you-
I mean, even if we don't, we have to have you guys back at some point. But yeah, I would totally love to do that. It might even just do its own thing, like do a whole thing about that.
That's funny.
You could start another podcast.
Yeah, a podcast within a podcast, podcastception.
Whoa.
Podception.
Whoa, Just got
Conception. That's
Alice,
awesome.
check out Fyre Byrd. Single out tomorrow. Evil, evil, evil exists.
Do it.
If you don't know, then click the link. Find out. Ask somebody. See you next week.
Bye bye.